Hello and welcome to the Paletteful Packs YouTube channel. My name is Alice and I have the November 2024 Paletteful Premiere Pack here in front of me. So let's go ahead, open it up and see what's inside. Yay, ink! Oh, this looks like a fun pack. Okay, so this is the sepia tone pack. So the first thing we have in here is this Daler Rowney FW sepia ink. So Daler Rowney ink is awesome. It's super pigmented and intense because it's pigment-based ink. It's not dye-based, it is pigment-based, so it's really archival and light-fast as well. And it can be used on so many different surfaces. It can be used on like paper and canvas, wood, fabric, all of the different kinds of things. And you can use it in a very controlled way, but you can also use it in like a very like flowing way. Okay, so the next thing I see in here is this little permanent marker pen by Art Alternatives. This is going to be in a brown color. Then we also have an Art Alternatives pigment liner in 0.1. This is a black, so we kind of have two waterproof liners here that we can use. What else? Ooh, pencil. Ooh, this is a Stabilo Aquarelli watercolor pencil, also in sepia. These are really cool because they write on a bunch of different surfaces. They write on paper, glass, plastic, and metal, but they're also water soluble, so they're a really interesting tool to use. What is this? The Pentel Milky Brush pen in white. Ooh, I've never seen this before. I love a new supply. Brush with water-based pigment ink. Milky opaque ink can be layered and works well on many different colors of paper. Perfect for brush lettering and decorations. Features high quality nylon bristles and a rear push system to control the flow of ink. Oh my gosh, this looks so cool. So we can use this to add white highlights to our kind of sepia images. We have another ink in here. This is the Graphics watercolor ink, and this is like a silver or pearl white. Yes, pearl white. Oh, that'll be really pretty. This we could like mix in with the sepia and like make the sepia metallic. I love using like metallic pearl whites to like tint other colors. So I don't know, there's some really cool stuff we can do with these. There's another Stabilo pencil in here too. This one is white. So we have white and brown of those Aquarelli pencils. We also have a paintbrush in here. This is a Robert Simmons watercolor size 4. I love size 4s. They're super, super versatile. You can kind of use them for everything. And it's a round, so we have a nice pointed tip, but then we can get kind of those larger areas by putting a little more pressure on it. Then we have this Strathmore Toned Tan Mixed Media Pad, 15 sheets, 6 by 8 inches. I love working on this little smaller size. And this is a toned tan paper. It's perfect for mixed media. It's really thick paper, so really sturdy, so you can kind of use all of these different tools on top of it. So I'm excited to play around with this, and it'll be a great base for all of the different browns that we have. Finally in here for the art supplies, we have this Copic multiliner set in sepia. It's gonna have a 0.05, a 0.1, a 0.3, and a 0.5. These are Copic fine liners. They are made of pigment ink and they are waterproof, archival and acid free, and they are also compatible with Copic markers. So these are awesome. Super excited to have another set of these because mine are really, really old and super dried up. Finally, we have a cute little sticker in here, very fall themed. I love this. Okay, so this is everything we're going to get in this month's box. We've got our Daler Rowney sepia ink. We have our Graphics Aqua watercolor ink in the white pearl. We have our two Stabilo Aquarelli pencils in white and sepia. We also have our brown permanent marker, our pigment ink liner, and then our Copic set, and then finally the Pentel Arts Milky Brush pen and the mixed media paper. Awesome. I am so excited about all of this stuff and I love working with sepia tones. So let's go ahead and get started on some art. Okay, so I'm going to start out by doing the sketch with the brown watercolor pencil. And I love sketching with watercolor pencils because you can just kind of smudge them out instead of erasing them if, you know, like you make a mistake. But I just kind of use a light hand when sketching, and I didn't want to draw the teeth of the skull because I am lazy and it just seemed like way too much effort. So I went ahead and just covered it with all of these flowers, this like kind of cool floral bouquet. So kind of combining a skull and flowers here today. I just felt like drawing something a little bit, I don't want to say more technical, but I don't know, a skull sounded interesting and fun to draw. And then the flowers literally came from me not wanting to draw teeth. So that's where the idea came from. So once I have the light sketch in place, I go ahead and start creating the shading with the brown watercolor pencil. And I'm usually The way I work with watercolor pencils is I start with the darkest and then I move to the lightest. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with those darker shadows kind of in the nose and inside the eyes, and using a heavier pressure on the watercolor pencil for that, really pressing down and getting a lot of pigment on there, and then using a lighter hand for those lighter bits of shading, putting less pigment on the paper, because it's all about how much pigment you put down. That's going to impact essentially how pigmented, I've said pigment a lot, but how bright and how dark the color is when you add water to it. So adding in all of that shading, and this was really like therapeutic and nice to just sit down and do this shading. It was just nice to sit and kind of get into the details. And then I went in and added the white, and the white was so fun to add. Just, I love adding white to tanned paper. It is the bee's knees. It is so fun, and just watching everything pop was so fantastic. So love adding that white, and this white watercolor works so nicely, especially with this sepia. And as you can see, when you add water, it does just like activate beautifully, and there's like no issues. It blends really nicely. You can get some really beautiful effects, and I was super happy with this. Like, this just made my, I don't know, like, this was really fun, and I didn't even like, I don't know, part of me was so happy with it at this point that I was like, I don't know if I even need to do anymore, but obviously I needed to use the other supplies. So I went ahead while I let that dry, and I kind of got the entire background damp with water, and then I put in that ink, and look how pretty this is with that sepia ink just kind of like spreading out. It is so pretty. Dragging that water up through the rest of the page and continuing to add more sepia ink just so that it creates this kind of like haloed effect around it. And I just love watching it like bloom on the paper. Like, wet on wet effects are one of my favorite effects. They're just really satisfying and fun to watch. And then adding in a little bit of a splatter to the page, and then going in with the white pearl and adding that in when it's still a little damp, so that it can spread out and kind of like diffuse into those other colors. So that's kind of how I'm creating the background here. Just want to create a lot of different texture and kind of play with that within the background. And I feel like I was really able to get some like really nice effects. I went in with the Milky Brush next and started going in with that Milky Brush for the center of the flowers, creating some white spots. And then I took some watered down brown ink and I essentially started blending that into the Milky Brush while it was still kind of wet, and blended it over the top, and it kind of created this almost like grayish color that added a little bit more visual interest to the flowers instead of them just being the same sepia as everything else. So just kind of mixing that white and that together, and then adding in some of that pearl to the center so that it was nice and shiny, because I love shiny. So I wanted to add the pearl to everything. And then I went back in with the pencils and started kind of going back over and bringing some of those details back that kind of got lost a little bit when I sprayed the whole thing and added in the water. So bringing back the details in the skull, and in those highlights, and really brightening those up with that pencil. And the great thing about watercolor pencils is that you don't always have to, go in and add water to them. You can just leave them as pencils, and that is a really nice effect as well, especially like when combined on top of just using them as watercolor pencils. So love that. I really wasn't sure what color I wanted these little like, I don't know, sprigs to be. So I started originally with this like darker watercolor pencil, and then I changed it like 10 times and ended up going over, I think in the end, with the metallic paint. But I did go in with the dark of the ink, and I used the ink really concentrated. So it was very pigmented, and did that for the leaves, and that made it so that the leaves were really dark and stood out a little bit more, which I really liked because it kind of helped those flowers pop a little bit more and the skull pop a little bit more. Because this is essentially like a monochrome piece, it's all like brown and white. We really want to play with contrast to make sure that the brights are popping and the darks are darking and everything is doing what it is supposed to do. So I went ahead and used a little bit of watered down ink to add in a little bit more shadow and just kind of increase that contrast and really make that skull pop. And then because I had all of these awesome fine liners to use, I went in and did this like little floral pattern on the skull, the top of the skull, so that it would kind of tie in the flowers down at the bottom and pull that in together and also give me a chance to use the fine liner. So I thought that looked kind of cool. I don't know if I love it, but I did it anyway. And then I went ahead and used the Sharpie, and I used that to put in the like veins for the leaves as well. And then I went in with the Milky brush for those little sprigs, and I liked the lighter, but it wasn't bright enough. So then I went in with that like pearl that I talked about a little earlier, but I'm also using the Milky brush to go in and add in more highlights and details to these flowers and really bring those out. And the Milky brush is so nice to use. Like, it's so, I don't know, it's got a really nice point to it and it flows really well. And you can kind of like dip it in to the white ink as well if you like want to make a little puddle of the white ink when you first start. That kind of helps control the flow a little bit, but it's really nice to work with. I love it. I'm so excited to work with it more. I think it's a really useful tool. It's definitely my favorite supply, I think, out of everything in the box. That and this pearl pigment because it's so pretty. I also used the Sharpie to add in a little bit of like stuff in the center of the flowers, and then I took off my washi tape and I was done with my painting, and I really like it. I think it came out really nice, and I hope that you guys like it too. I'm excited to see what everyone does with this month's supplies and see all of your sepia pieces. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to join Paletteful Packs, then click the link in the description box below to get your own box and get a fun box of goodies every month. Thanks so much. Bye.